Hello, this is an introduction to Outspoken, my Unity dialogue editor. A very important thing first, Outspoken is an internal software which only a few people and obviously me are currently using. I don't know if I ever will make it public, but just in case, here it is. And first of all, let me start with the philosophy of Outspoken. Since I'm not going to add text to this dialogue, before changing subject and talking about something, I will very seriously just say title, ta-da, because I'm very silly. So you will know this is a new section. So, philosophy, ta-da. The philosophy of Outspoken is based most of all on the idea of a writer-centric dialogue editor. Because my concept, my idea as a writer and as a person that makes tools is that when a writer writes, he doesn't want to be distracted by clutter, extra informations, but one wants to see everything as much as at a glance as possible. And this is all that is behind this. Also, one important thing to remember is that when we write stuff for games, we're usually not writing a story, or mainly the story is a minor thing compared to what we're really writing, which is dialogues. And when you write a dialogue, you must really be focused. You enter into the character, you feel like it, you have to change from the feeling of one character to the other. So having to deal with extra buttons, cluttered interfaces, etc. is a pain. And that's just my idea behind what this is. So, the interface. Ta-da! The interface of Outspoken is based on its general core functionality and division of elements. First of all, we have collections and dialogues. Collections are a collection of dialogues, and dialogues are a collection of nodes. Nodes are what actually creates your dialogue. They can be text nodes, choice nodes, they can be condition, they can be random things, but this is it. About the nodes, before I introduce them, let me talk about the setup of Outspoken. I don't know if this deserves a ta-da, but let's say the setup. Ta-da! I know you like this, yeah, you will hate me in a short while. So, first of all, in the setup of your dialog project, which by the way is all saved to disk inside the streaming assets folder, you will choose how you want choices to behave. If you want single choices to be removed after you selected them, and in case you go back to the same node, then you choose the language. You can add as many languages as you want. Now it doesn't let me do it because it wants me to save the project first, which I don't want to do in this demo, so just trust me. The localization format is both PO and CSV. Personally, I believe that PO is a fantastic system and language to translate stuff, but that's my personal battle. I can't find anybody really using it, so there's also CSV, sadly. Then there's vars, where you define global vars that you can access both inside the dialogues, inside Outspoken's dialogue editor, and outside of them in your runtime code. These are actually saved into an outvar CS file, which is created each time you save your dialogue project, so that you can access them directly without having to rely to strings that are much more error prone. Finally, there are the actors, which are the people that will talk and take choices inside your game. Actors are defined by a type, which is actually something that you define in a custom enum flex enum actor type, so that you can assign more than one type to the same actor. And they define, you can add them, you can give them a texture that is shown in the editor when you, whoops. That's a bug, oh my god, I have to fix it. In the editor when you create a node for that specific actor, as also their color is shown, as you can see, their first color. The other colors you can use them for whatever you want. And then you select a gender. This is just my test project, so as of now I'm simply using neutral female, male, but also those are customizable obviously. And that's it. You can add more textures eventually if you want different images based on the mood of that specific actor. And there you go. Now the nodes. Ta-da! So we have many types of nodes in Outspoken. The basic ones are text and choice nodes, which I think are pretty self-explanatory. The text nodes, you just create them, write dialogue, etc. There's tons of shortcuts to you can obviously use right click to create a type of node, but you can see there are also shortcuts so that you don't have to leave your keyboard and go back to your mouse too much. You can automatically create nodes for specific actors, choice nodes for them, and so on. Again, let me show you, for example, with the choice nodes. If you press Alt, more buttons appear, so you can reorganize the cells, you can delete them, you can add more, and so on. You have a minimap to help you, obviously, so that if the nodes exit your area, you can see them. Red ones are the ones that have no connection. This choice node has 3 connections, but is missing the 4th one, and this is shown in the minimap and by this icon. This is useful because usually you will have at least one node in any dialogue that will not have a connection, but you just want to keep them under control, and usually that is the final node of your dialogue when you know that, okay, this is done, let's move on. A few other nodes that we see here are the random node, which just selects, outputs a random node, and the switch node, which goes to a different node each time you enter it. It can be set in different ways also, by the way, like pressing Alt again. As you can see here it's set as a loop, so it will first go to the first one, to the second one, to the third one, and then go back to the first one, second one, and so on. You can set it instead as random, and it will just go to any random node, or you can just set it to straight up. Straight up is a word that I just invented for this. I don't think it's really accurate, but anyway, it will go, in this case, the first time it's entered, to the first, then to the second, then to the third, and then we'll just always go to the third. Usually you want the loop, but it depends on the cases. Other types of nodes are condition nodes, which are very important, condition and multi-condition, which have a different type of outputs. I won't get too much into detail, but anyway, they're evaluated. If they're true, they go into one direction. If they're false, they go into another. You have items, which are kind of like text nodes, but when you don't need an actor. For example, I use them when I have a computer that needs to write stuff. I don't really have a computer actor. Or I use also Outspoken for terms. For example, the play, continue, restart buttons, and for those I obviously don't need an actor. I mean, I could, it might be an interesting game, but I didn't. Then you have note nodes. Note nodes are just traversed. What does traversed mean? This is an important factor. At runtime, when you let's see that you are at this node. Actually, let's make it simple. Okay, let's see that you are at this node, and you tell the dialog to move next. The dialog will not stop at a node unless it is a content node. So in this case, random nodes are not content nodes. It will just go here, automatically determine what it has to do, and stop here and return to you that specific node from which you can get text, etc. And note nodes are pass-through nodes. They're not content nodes. So if, for example, from this item we go to this node and then we go to this dialog, when I say next from here, I will go. The dialog system will actually return me this node. But since it has passed through a note node nodes are ignored, and usually you can just use them to write notes to yourself or to everybody else who is working on the project. But if there is a variable assignment, as here, then that will actually be assigned. Just something we will talk about later when it will be the variables chapter. Things to note also is the jump to dialog node, which allows you to jump to another dialog, and eventually, let me show you better here, and eventually to also select a specific node inside that dialog. And that's it for nodes. You can quickly select nodes and switch them to another type of nodes, so you don't have to recreate them. As usual, Alt button also allows me to set a mood. Moods are set in the mood type class. They're custom made and they're based on these enums and this icon assignment. I personally use smileys. You can use whatever you want. And then, for example, if I want to set this to happy, this is done. I use emoticons because they're shorter, you see them clearer, it's very easy to determine. And this is it. Now let's talk about global variables. Ta-da! Global variables are set, as I told you, here in this setup. And you can query them in your nodes. There is I created a custom parser, which is relatively limited but allows to do most of what you need. So you can, for example, here it's a sample int variable, and you can check if it's more than 3, and if sample bool 0 is false. How you write sample global variables? You accept any condition nodes. You just open and close braces, and then let's say that I want to set sample int to 2. Done. As you can see, as long as the statement is invalid, the node is marked as error node or something. You don't need the braces in condition and multi-condition nodes instead, because you can only use variables inside there, so they already know that you're gonna write that. And this is for global variables. You can read them and set them also, as I mentioned, in your own code, so they're rather flexible for this. Another type of, let's say, not really programming system, but procedural system that is implemented in Outspoken is the string block system. A block is something that is written with square braces, and by the way, maybe I should have said block system. Ta-da! Yes, I started to feel very ridiculous. I hope my neighbors don't hear me. And blocks defined between square braces are divided by this character, and I don't know if you saw it because my mouse wasn't there, but I'm moving here. And they can be used as is, like if, for example, I write 1, 2, 3. This is a random block which will return me randomly 1, 2, or 3. Or I can use them with a global variable, for example, sample bool, which, depending if sample bool is if sample bool is false, it will return true. If instead it's true, it will return 2 or 3. And there you can see more examples here. Help button, top right, nobody ever remembers it. And here you have all the examples of how you can use variables, blocks, etc. So I'm not going too deep into that, but just take a screenshot here, I don't know. Another thing to note, by the way, let me say this, the help system. Ta-da! Something that nobody ever remembers is that the help panel has this area which is customizable and is saved with your dialog project, so that you can write notes to other people working on the project or to yourself if you have specific usages for dialogues. It allows you to use rich HTML tags and then displays them nicely. That's it. Okay, so for the final chapter of this presentation, let me talk a little bit about the options. Ta-da! My god, this is getting worse and worse. There's tons of options in Outspoken, because kind of everything that I thought of or that other users suggested me, I always thought, well, this could be an option, so it can be done in different ways. Just know that you have tons and tons of options here, both for the editor and for the runtime side. You can one notable thing is that you can also decide some characters that are highlighted, so that I don't know, sometimes you want to use some specific markers inside your text to mark something special that you want to do when you get the text. You can set them here so that it will be highlighted in your text and it will be easier. Oh, and about highlight, just one thing that I don't know if I mentioned, yeah, but probably you noticed it, that tags are evidenced. So unclosed tags are marked as red, correctly closed one is marked as green, because apart the writer friendliness, I also thought that an important thing is to be less human error prone as possible, because being human error prone means being writer unfriendly. So that's it. This is a very generic and kind of vague explanation of Outspoken. It's just an idea of its main features. I didn't even mention that, for example, you also can have storyboard examples which you can use just to write your storyboards or whatever, that are not exported as real dialogues in the end. You can mark dialogues, etc., with different types of icons, so that you know what's gonna happen, or you know this needs review, this needs to be written, etc. The same thing you can do with nodes. You have various marks that you can add to them same nodes. You have an editor preview of dialogues that open in the wrong screen. There it is, so that you can quickly test dialogues in the editor, and on and on. At runtime, if you have Outspoken open, it will focus on the selected dialogue, will show you how many times a node has been entered, etc. You have a full log system with nice colors, and you can create more projects, save projects with different names. You can export localizations for all your languages. You can log project statistics and stuff. But I think that this is it for now. Oh, you have obviously, let me just go at it randomly, a search feature, hello, which highlights all nodes, etc. with what you write. Yeah, there's also a find and replace feature. There's a toolbox which allows you to find specific nodes that contain specific stuff. There's triggers, which I didn't even mention, that are specific actions that you can actually set, that are fired when that node is entered, so that's set to enter, exit, and you create them again with a specific type of enum that has all kinds of instruction inside it. But I mean, for a generic introduction, I think that's it, and have a lovely day. Ta-da!